A golden dawn spilled across Dry Creek Bend, dust rising from the hooves of passing horses, the town already murmuring with the sound of hammers and wagon wheels. The air smelled of metal and flour and faraway rain. Among the bustle walked Clara Mayfield, a woman with a faded lavender dress and boots that had known too many miles. Her eyes stayed low, her breath steady, though her heart felt hollow as an old barn. Whispers followed her like shadows. "That's the one who got left," someone muttered near the mercantile. "The preacher's bride that never was," said another. Clara didn't flinch. She'd learned that shame made folks speak louder, as if they could drown their own loneliness. She'd come west chasing a promise, a ring, a name, a man, but the promise had vanished on the second sunrise after arrival. Now she scrubbed saloon floors for coins, slept behind kitchen doors, and thanked the stars when no one noticed her. That morning, a piece of paper fluttered on the post outside the feed store. The ink was faded, the words plain: ranch hand or cook wanted. Crow Ranch. Fair pay, quiet house. Quiet. The word alone felt like mercy. She read it twice, then folded the paper into her pocket. Elias Crow was mending a fence when she found him. Tall, broad-shouldered, his shirt sun-bleached, his silence steady. A hawk circled above the pasture as if guarding him. When Clara approached, she didn't meet his eyes. "I don't talk much, mister," she said, her voice nearly swallowed by the wind. "But I can cook." He looked at her for a long time, long enough for the moment to feel like judgment. Then, simply, "You got a place to stay?" "No, sir." "Then you'd better start tonight." He turned back toward the ranch house without another word. She followed, clutching her small cloth bag, her stomach tight but her steps certain. Inside the kitchen, dust floated in the pale light. The shelves were half empty, the stove cold. Clara set down her bag, rolled up her sleeves, and began. Flour, water, a pinch of salt. She moved quietly, the rhythm of her hands steady and sure. When Elias came in at sundown, the air smelled of cornbread and simmering beans. He ate in silence, nodded once, and left half his plate untouched for her. That night, she slept under a roof that didn't smell of ale or regret. Days slid by like slow water. Clara rose before dawn, milked the cow, kneaded bread, mended shirts. Elias worked the fields, his silhouette distant and wordless against the sky. They lived like clock hands, moving separately but always toward the same hour. "Did I in town?" Tongues wagged. May Tilly, the innkeeper, leaned over her counter to whisper. "That Crow fella hired that woman from the saloon. Lord knows what she's really cooking." Back at the ranch, Clara scrubbed the porch until her knuckles bled. Elias noticed the cuts, but said nothing. That night, she found a tin of salve beside her plate. No note, no glance. Just a quiet act that said everything he wouldn't. She didn't thank him out loud. She just met his eyes, briefly, and nodded once. Their silence became its own language. When he brought in firewood, she had coffee ready. When she baked bread, he moved the chair so the light fell where she liked to read the old Bible she carried. Both carried ghosts. His wife's laughter that still seemed to linger in the walls. Her mother's last words warning, "Don't go where you ain't wanted." The house began to soften. One evening, while stirring stew, Clara hummed a hymn she'd nearly forgotten. Elias paused in the doorway, listening. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just stood there, remembering something the music had stirred. The sound filled the empty spaces between them, fragile but alive. Then came the storm. It rolled in from the west, black and swollen, lightning slicing the sky. Elias saddled up to bring the herd in, leaving Clara to tend the lamps. The wind howled through every crack of the house. The rafters groaned. When he returned, soaked and shivering, she was waiting at the door with a blanket and a bowl of stew. Her hands trembled as she helped him peel off his wet coat. Their fingers brushed, brief, electric. He sat by the fire, his breath uneven. She knelt nearby, drying his coat, hair damp against her cheek. "You didn't have to wait up," he murmured. "Didn't have anywhere else to be," she said. They sat in silence as thunder rolled away into the hills. The flames reflected in their eyes, the air thick with everything neither dared name. Outside, the rain softened into mist. Inside, something small and wordless began, like a seed pressing against the dark, waiting for spring. Weeks passed quietly after the storm. The air grew colder, the nights longer. The gossip in Dry Creek Bend grew sharper, too, sharper than frost. Elias rode into town for salt and nails one morning, unaware of the whispers building behind him. May Tilly leaned over her counter, whispering to anyone who'd listen, "That woman's still up at Crow's place, cooking for him, living under his roof. Lord, what decent man lets that happen?" By evening, Clara heard every word. Jed Monroe rode by the ranch, half drunk, tossing laughter through the gate. "Hey, Crow," he called. "You feeding your cook or courting her?" Elias's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. That silence, the same silence that once felt like safety, suddenly cut her to the bone. When Elias returned to the house, he found her outside by the barn, hands still, eyes hollow. She was holding a torn letter. "Got this from the post," she said softly. He looked down. The handwriting was careful, familiar, the man who had left her. She'd read it again and again until the words had burned themselves into her heart. "Married now. Don't come looking. Wish you peace." Her voice trembled. "Seems I'm always the fool, mister." Elias took off his hat, set it on the rail. "You ain't a fool," he said. "You just believed in someone who didn't deserve it. But shame is a stubborn ghost." That night, she packed her few belongings, a shawl, a Bible, her mother's comb, and left a note on the kitchen table. "Thank you for letting me stay. You deserve quiet. I bring noise." When Elias woke at dawn, the house felt too still. The stove was cold. Her note lay beside the untouched bread. Outside, the snow had begun to fall, erasing her tracks almost as quickly as she made them. But he saddled his horse without a word. By noon, he found her wagon near the frozen creek, one well sunk deep in the mud. She was kneeling beside it, hands red and raw, trying to free it alone. Her hair was coming loose from its braid, her breath visible in the cold. "You could have waited till spring if you wanted a clean escape," he said gently. She froze, then looked up at him with tear-bright eyes. "I can't stay where folks think I came for a man's company instead of honest work." Elias dismounted, stepped into the freezing water, and lifted the wheel free with one hard push. He looked at her, really looked, the way a man looks when he's seeing something true for the first time. "Let them think what they will," he said. "I know what's true, and so do you." Her lips parted, no sound coming. The wind howled across the plains. Then he did something small, placed his hat over her head. "Come home, Clara," he said quietly. "The soup will get cold." It wasn't a declaration. It was an offering, and she understood. She nodded once, slow, eyes shining through the falling snow. Days later, the world softened again. Jonah appeared, a lost boy no more than 8, wandering the trail half-starved, searching for an uncle who'd never come back from the mines. Clara took him in without question. She fed him biscuits, wrapped him in her shawl, and sat him by the fire until he slept. Watching her care for the boy stirred something old and aching in Elias, the kind of ache that comes from remembering what warmth feels like. Jonah began calling her Miss May, trailing her everywhere, filling the quiet house with laughter neither of them knew they'd missed. One evening, as the sun sank over the fields, Elias turned to her while she kneaded dough. "You've made this place feel alive again," he said. She didn't answer, just reached across the table to dust flour from his sleeve. That small touch, soft, human, unguarded, felt like the sound of spring breaking through frost. That night, the barn caught fire. A lantern left too close to the hay, a single careless spark, and suddenly the world was ablaze. Jonah's scream pierced the night. Clara ran first, skirts flying, into the choking smoke. Elias followed, covering his face with his arm that he found her inside, lifting the boy into her arms as flames clawed at the walls. Without thinking, he tore off his coat and wrapped it around them both. The roof groaned, timbers cracking above. He dragged them through the doorway just as the ceiling gave way behind him. The three of them collapsed in the snow, coughing, shaking, alive. The barn burned down to its bones, painting the sky red. Elias's hand found hers in the ash and cold. Neither spoke. They didn't need to be mourning. The fire was only smoke and ruin. But in that ruin lay something pure, the kind of silence that holds forgiveness instead of fear. Spring came slow to Dry Creek Bend. The ranch rebuilt piece by piece. Fence posts, a new barn, laughter returning like birds. Jonah chased chickens in the yard. The smell of bread drifted through the open window again. Elias leaned on the porch rail one quiet morning, watching the wheat shimmer in the wind. Clara stepped out beside him, apron dusted with flour, cheeks flushed with warmth. For once, her eyes met his without hesitation. "I don't talk much, mister," she said, smiling softly. "Good," Elias murmured. "We've said enough." The wind moved through the fields like a hymn, gentle and endless, and somewhere deep in that sound, between the rustle of wheat and the steady beat of two hearts finally unafraid, the story of their redemption settled. Quiet and sure as dawn, some stories aren't about loud miracles. They're about the quiet ones, the kind that begin with a stranger's kindness, a bowl of soup, a fire survived together. If you ever find yourself standing at the edge of shame or loss, remember Clara Mayfield, the woman who had nothing left but the courage to knock on a door and whisper, "I can cook." And remember Elias Crow, who didn't need words to love, only a home that smelled of bread and forgiveness. Because sometimes, all it takes to begin again is the quiet grace of two souls who finally stop running from the noise of their own hearts.